It was supposed to be a quiet goodbye. My grandpa had just passed, and after the funeral, all I wanted was a few peaceful days on his farm. There is a big days only used to do every summer. The old place held memories in every corner. But what I didn't expect was to come face to face with a nightmare wrapped in pearls and clipboard fury. Karen from the HOA. And trust me, this wasn't your average neighborly disagreement. She showed up less than 48 hours after we buried my grandfather, claiming the entire property violated neighborhood codes. Despite the fact that we're a working farm and the land's been in our family for 3 generations, Karen wasn't alone either. She came armed with papers, threats, and a smug little smile that screamed she thought she'd already won. She said the HOA had unanimously voted to seize the property due to non-compliance, citing made-up infractions like unauthorized livestock, non-standard fencing, and even excessive morning gatherings. I'm not kidding. The woman literally tried to fine us for having too many guests at a funeral. Now, here's what she didn't know. I wasn't just some grieving granddaughter. I'm also one of the top litigation attorneys in the state. Civil code, property rights, land use lie. Don't just know the rules. I've helped write them. But I didn't let on, not at first. Because when someone shows you who they are, sometimes it's better to let them dig their own hole. What? Started as a petty power play turned into a full-blown legal war. Karen thought she could bulldoze us with made-up HOA rules and pressure tactics. But she messed with the wrong family and the wrong lawyer. What she didn't realize was, I came prepared to fight back, and that's when I found the clause that changed everything. Grandpa's farm wasn't just a patch of land, it was the heart of our family. He'd worked that soil since he was a teenager, and over the years, built something real. We had goats, chickens, a small apple orchard, and even a greenhouse he'd put together with his own hands. The land was zoned agricultural long before any of these cookie-cutter homes even existed nearby. But over the last 10 years, the area changed. Developers moved in, new subdivisions popped up, and sure enough, the HOA followed. My grandfather had always been civil, but he didn't bend easily, and Karen never liked that. She tried over and over to get him to comply, which basically meant turning the farm into a lawn with a white fence. The weird part was, Karen didn't live anywhere near our property line. Her house was almost 2 blocks away in one of the newer builds. Yet, somehow, she'd been promoted to president of the HOA and suddenly started rewriting rules that seemed oddly specific to us. I later found out she'd also been pressuring nearby homeowners to support some kind of land beautification initiative, which basically meant forcing anyone who didn't fit her idea of suburbia out. Quietly, legally, or so she thought. When I came back to the farm after the funeral, I noticed little things off. The mailbox had been broken. One of the gates was open. Our goats had gotten out. Grandpa's old workshop had been rummaged through like someone was looking for papers. At first, I thought maybe it was just coincidence. But when Karen showed up with a stack of supposed violations and a smug smile, it all clicked. She didn't want the farm gone. She wanted the land. And I was about to find out just how far she was willing to go to take it. I started digging both, literally and legally. Karen thought she was clever, hiding behind bylaws and HOA technicalities. But she didn't expect me to request public records, zoning maps, and the original HOA charter. The first red flag. Our farm was never officially included in the HOA boundaries. The developers had tried to expand the HOA zone years ago, but the paperwork was never completed. Legally, the farm was outside their jurisdiction, but Karen was betting no one would look close enough to catch that. I hadn't even opened Grandpa's full estate file yet, and now I was wondering what else she thought she could bury under. Red tape, meanwhile. My little cousin Jake, he's 16 and spent every summer helping Grandpa with something weird behind the old shed. A pile of torn-up flyers, and underneath, a freshly hammered stake with a plastic orange ribbon tied around it. I knew exactly what it was, a surveyor's marker. Someone had been trying to map out the land, probably without permission. That wasn't just suspicious, was illegal. But Karen was playing a long game, and I could tell this wasn't just about rules or complaints. Someone was planning a buyout or a land grab, and they needed us gone before we caught on. Then I started hearing things from neighbors. One of them, Mrs. Alvarez, told me Karen had been visiting houses up and down the road with a glossy brochure about a new lifestyle community proposal. Luxury homes, clubhouse, private trails. And guess what? Right in the middle of her little mock-up map was our farm. She had drawn it in like it was already hers. Wasn't just about control. Was about flipping the land for profit. But before I could act, someone tried to shut us down from another Anglo letter arrived from the county. And what it said nearly made my stomach drop. The letter from the county looked official. Stamped and signed, but the wording was off. It claimed the farm was under review for non-conforming land use, and that certain activities like raising livestock might be in violation of revised zoning standards. Revised. That didn't make sense. Grandpa had operated under the same agricultural zoning for decades. I checked the code online and saw no changes. But the letter hinted at something deeper. Someone had submitted a complaint strong enough to trigger a formal review. And I had a good idea who was behind it. I reached out to a contact I trusted at the county recorder's office and asked her to look into the complaint. She called back 2 days later, whispering like she didn't even want her voice on record. "You didn't hear it from me," she said. "But someone submitted a land use challenge under a corporate entity, Tri-Point Redevelopment LLC. It's new, formed just last month." I froze. That name hadn't come up before. Searched it. And sure enough, buried under shell paperwork and P.O. boxes was a quiet little LLC with one registered agent. Karen's husband. At the same time, strange things kept happening around the farm. Our water pressure suddenly dropped. We found tire tracks through the backfield. A county inspector showed up unannounced, taking pictures without asking. Jake caught someone parked near the south fence line late one night, just sitting in their car with the lights off. Whoever they were, they sped off the second he approached. The pressure was closing in fast. Karen had turned the HOA into her personal weapon, using fake citations, intimidation, and now a company she secretly controlled to try and push us off our own land. And with the county stepping in, I knew this was more than a neighborly dispute. This was a strategic takedown. She had the HOA, a development plan, and the backing of quiet investors. What she didn't know was that I had something even stronger: proof, leverage, and one clause in Grandpa's will that she never saw coming. And once I played it, everything would change. I finally sat down with Grandpa's estate file, the one I hadn't opened since the funeral. I don't know why I waited so long. Maybe I was scared of what else I might find, or maybe part of me just wasn't ready to let go. But buried in the back of that folder, tucked behind a copy of the land deed, was a letter. Not from a lawyer or bank, but from Grandpa himself. It was handwritten, dated 6 months before he passed. And what it said flipped everything on its head. He'd been aware of Karen's moves for a while. Even suspected someone was trying to manipulate the HOA board behind the scenes. But here's the twist: he didn't just sit quietly. He took action. In that letter, he explained how he had secretly transferred the farm into a conservation trust with agricultural protections. A move that made the property nearly untouchable by developers or outside interests. The only catch? The trust wouldn't show publicly until after probate cleared something Karen had clearly never counted on. But that wasn't all. In the same file, there was another document: an unsigned lease agreement between Tri-Point Redevelopment and a local real estate group. They had plans. Massive ones. Karen's LLC had already entered a conditional purchase agreement on 3 adjacent lots, including the narrow access road that ran just south of our farm. If they got the farm, they'd control the whole stretch. Without it, their entire plan fell apart. That's why she was so desperate. That's why she'd sent inspectors, filed false claims, and stirred up the HOA. She wasn't just trying to ruin a farm. She was trying to unlock a multi-million-dollar land deal. And then, just when I thought I had everything lined up to expose her, my office was broken into. Files moved, my laptop gone, and only one case folder missing, the one with all the evidence, tied to Karen and TriPoint. Now it wasn't just about land anymore. It was about who was willing to cross the line, and how far they'd go to keep the truth buried. I didn't waste time. The break-in made everything clear. Karen was panicking. She knew the walls were closing in, and now she was getting sloppy. But what she didn't know was that I had already made digital copies of everything zoning. Maps, her LLC documents, the fake HOA citations, even the TriPoint development plans with her husband's signature. The missing folder. That was just bait, and someone had taken it right on cue. The next morning, I'd filed an emergency injunction with the county court to halt all land action on our property. I walked into that hearing with everything proof of the Conservation Trust, the false claims Karen made as HOA president, and her hidden financial interests through TriPoint. I laid it out clearly for the judge. She had violated ethics rules, misused her authority, and targeted our farm in a deliberate scheme to flip land for personal profit. Karen showed up, pretending to be shocked. She claimed ignorance, denied everything. But when the judge asked her under oath if she had any connection to TriPoint Redevelopment LLC, and she said no, that's when I dropped the final piece. I handed the court clerk a certified statement from the Secretary of State's office. Karen's husband wasn't just a partner, she was listed as co-manager. The room went silent. The judge immediately ordered a full investigation into HOA dealings and froze all TriPoint transactions involving local property. The county dropped the land use complaint within hours. Karen was removed from the HOA board and her development deal. Dead in the water. But just when I thought it was over, I got a call from Mrs. Alvarez. She found an envelope taped to her door. No return address. Inside were photos, grainy ones, of someone standing in our barn weeks ago. But it wasn't Karen. It was someone else. Someone I knew from court. A city council member I'd crossed in a different case last year. That's when I realized Karen might have been the front, but someone bigger had been pulling the strings all along. And they weren't finished yet. I handed the photos over to the investigators, already looking into Karen's dealings. Turns out, the city council member in those pictures had quietly helped approve zoning variances tied to TriPoint's proposed development violating conflict of interest laws in the process. Once that connection came to light, the case expanded fast. The councilman resigned before charges could be filed, and the TriPoint project officially collapsed. No more backdoor deals. No more surprise letters. Just quiet. With the Conservation Trust now public and legally binding, the farm is protected for good. Grandpa must have known something like this might happen, and I can't thank him enough for thinking ahead. I got to stand in that courtroom and defend not just our land, but his legacy. The goats are back where they belong, the orchards in bloom. And Jake's already started planting a new section for next season. We've got a lot of work ahead, but it finally feels like the kind that matters. As for Karen, she disappeared from the neighborhood almost overnight. The HOA board went through a full restructuring, and several neighbors came forward to share stories about how she'd bullied them, too. In the end, people started talking more, standing up together. That might be the real win in all of this. What I learned. Never underestimate the power of paperwork, persistence, or one angry lawyer with a reason to fight. Land disputes, HOA drama, shady development deals, they all thrive on silence. But the second you shine a light on the truth, people like Karen scatter fast. This was never just about property lines or zoning codes. It was about a promise to family, to community, and to the people who think they can't push back. Because sometimes, the farm doesn't just fight back. It wins.